Welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Kerry Stevenson. Today I'm speaking with Matthew Bowles. He is the Managing Director and CEO of Alto Metals. ASX code is AME. Now, I've asked Matt to come back and have a chat with us today because they've been putting out some pretty spectacular results recently, especially on their latest project, Indomitable, which I've really tried to practice, Matt, about how to say that word, but I struggle with it, but some really good grades coming out of that. So welcome back to Small Caps. Great to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Thanks for having me here.
Well, you've been busy. For those that don't know, let's just do a brief overview of who are Alto Metals, and then we'll get into the projects and what you've been doing over the past 6 months.
Yeah, thanks. Look, for those listeners that don't know the story that well, I mean, we're an advanced West Australian gold explorer. We've got a dominant land position in the East Merchant of Western Australia. It covers 900 square kilometres of the Sandstone Greenstone Belt. Sandstone's had mining activity since the early 1900s. It's already produced over 1.3 million ounces. I think mining first stopped there when the First World War broke out. So it's had a lot of activity over the years. But we're the first company that's gone back in there since Troy had it last over 10, 15 years ago, to have the whole ground together as one. And so we're really hitting it pretty hard. And we're getting a lot of great results coming out. Bit of a checkered history with a bit of M&A activity, which has probably stopped us from accelerating the exploration as much as possible. But we have some fantastic supportive shareholders in there, and the last 18 months has been fantastic. We've been getting out and hitting it hard and finding a lot of gold.
Well, I think you've been doing it in a very systematic way, which is clever. And as you just said a moment ago, you've kind of locked up that whole sandstone greenstone belt, haven't you? 900 square kilometres. Let's just talk about some of the projects that you've got, because I want our audience to understand the value that you're unlocking in this area. And you mentioned Troy a moment ago. They didn't do the work that you're doing now, but you've only been drilling quite shallow at the moment. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, that's right. I guess when Troy had it, a lot of it was driven by an oxide mill that they had. So we've got some old historic pits there that they mined out the oxide, and they produced some fantastic grade. I mean, Lord Nelson was over 200,000 ounces at 4.6 grams, all on the oxide. And when the mining hit the top of fresh rock, they stopped mining, and it was really because it couldn't go through that mill. So that was a great place for us to start.
Okay.
And Lord Nelson's hosted a big granodiorite intrusion. So it extends for 3 kilometres, and there's another oxide pit at the other end. And we're really just sort of following that plunge to the south and drilling all the way along that big granodiorite. Which is pretty exciting because, you know, the granodiorite, from what we've seen so far, it's quite similar to Red 5's Tarmula granodiorite, which is a multi-million ounce deposit. So that's really exciting for us with some of the grade we're getting from Lord Nelson, sort of over 40, 60 metres at sort of 2.5 to 3 grams. Some great results. And then, I mean, that's just one area that we were following up from historical sort of Troy work. Then there's a couple of unmined deposits that they sort of initially identified, and we've gone back in and sort of systematically exploring those. So it's a case of, I guess the challenge has been for quite some time is we've got a very, very large land holding, and how we explore that without stretching ourselves too far. And so
Yeah, because you don't, and that's, I guess that would be the question from people watching or listening and watching today is 900 square kilometres is a lot.
Yeah.
How do you work out where that's massive, 900 square kilometres. So you talked about what we call the Lord Nelson. Is that your focus right now, or are you moving on to Indomitable? I just want to have a feel for what the next steps are in such a big area.
Yeah, it is. And when I first got involved, it's kind of like sitting down and talking to the geos and asking them to pick their favourite child, because we basically had to focus on one key area, and that initially was the Lords. And sort of there were some obvious targets to follow up there, and that's led to a couple of other new discoveries of new lodes, Orion and then Juno, that were found. And that started to build that momentum. And then we've started to reintroduce some of the other prospects. And we're focusing, if you can imagine sort of sandstones, it's great. It's a big triangle, and on both sort of the east and western sides, 2 major shear zones. And so what's happened is you've got the two big shear zones, and you typically find some, really good deposits on those shears, but then the rocks have folded into themselves as well.
Okay.
And so we're targeting the alpha domain, which is on the eastern side, which follows that shear, and then it bends back around again. So, and within that alpha domain, we have it hosts all of our resource at the moment, which sits at 635,000 ounces. And our two other key deposits, Vanguard and Indomitable. So they're the other two deposits that we're starting to advance a lot more rapidly. And that's really just that targeted focus. So we're not stretching ourselves too far, but it's where we are now. It's a great time. We've sort of, fast forward 18 months, we've hit Vanguard really hard. We drilled 25,000 meters or so there last year. We tripled the size of that resource from 50,000 ounces to 150,000 ounces. Vanguard's still open over a 2 kilometre long trend on a northwest sort of trend, and that's the same trend that runs all the way up that then hosts Indomitable, which we're drilling right now and have been for the last couple of months.
So Vanguard and Indomitable are on the same, the same area, the same shear zone?
That's right. Yeah, so both Vanguard and Indomitable are hosted within a 20 kilometre long gold corridor.
Okay.
So that's just down in the southeast area of our overall property. So you can see that starts to give you the scale of, we're at the alpha domain. It's a 20 kilometre long corridor. So it's really exciting, and we're just getting out there and drilling those key targets and focusing on that.
How deep you so again, going back to 900 square kilometres, so you are just focusing down in that little triangle at the bottom. How deep are you going? How much drilling is still to come? What's the news flow going to be like over the next couple of months?
Yeah, look, that's a really good couple of questions there. There's a great slide I've got in the presentation which shows all the drilling that's ever been done over the property, and then all the drilling that's deeper than 100 metres. And it goes from a tenement that's been completely peppered to something that's got hardly any holes there at all, because it's most of the drilling historically was quite shallow. Bearing in mind you're just chasing these near surface oxide deposits, and so we are drilling a little bit deeper. At the Lords, for example, we're chasing that granodiorite down. We've drilled down to about sort of 220 odd metres, which still isn't that deep. And all the resources we've got, they're all defined. So 90% of it is less than 150 metres from surface, so still very shallow, all within open pits as well, which is it's pretty important. It sort of demonstrates that most of that resource all falls into optimised pit shells. So there's a lot more drilling to do. There's a lot more unfinished business at the Lords. If we look at Vanguard, our average drill depth there is maybe only down to about 150 metres. We have drilled some deeper holes down to sort of 200, but that's chasing those high-grade sort of structures at depth. And then Indomitable, our average drilling at Indomitable at the moment is about 124 to 130 metres depth. We have drilled some deeper holes again where we see those big structures. We've drilled some diamond holes down to about 250 metres last year, and again hit those structures. So we know there's some big structures, which is where those fluids are coming through at depth. But right now at Indomitable, it's just we're trying to demonstrate and sort of define how big the footprint is. So Indomitable at the moment, to give you an understanding, we had some results that came out yesterday. That's extended the strike another 500 metres on that northwest trend. So Indomitable is defined over 2.5 kilometres now, and is still open on a northwest southeast trend, and also further to the northeast. So it's really exciting for us.
So because how many rigs have you got on site?
So we've got one rig. We took the strategy of securing at the beginning of the year one rig for the whole year. And partly that was just so we could have some, obviously progress that systematic exploration, but also so we had continual news flow coming through, and we could actually plan more successfully or succinctly plan our drilling programs going forward. Whereas last year, we had a bit of a drilling blitz going on. We had 3 rigs on site. And then with the delays with the labs, we were finishing drill programs before we were getting results back, which was fortunate because we had other prospects to send the rigs to, which is why we moved one of the rigs from Lords to Vanguard. But it was I had a full head of hair last year when we had that going on. So Yeah, it's quite nice having the one rig because we can really sort of plan, get the results back, and then which is exactly what we're doing at Indomitable at the moment. The rig's gone from Indomitable North. We're drilling at Indomitable East at the moment. Sorry, we've finished drilling at Indomitable East. We're moving down to Musketeer, which is one of the other prospects in that camp area. And now when we get the results back from Indomitable East, and then with the results we announced yesterday from Indomitable North, we can now send the rig back there to follow up on those results. So we're getting a lot more immediate traction rather than sort of waiting 2 to 3 months for assays, which just kills any momentum.
So the current resource at Indomitable North, what is it? Because your latest results, I guess, will be extending that mineralisation. Is that correct?
That's right. So the resource at Indomitable, at the moment sits at 74,000 ounces at 1.3. Now, there's some very high grade zones in there, and then obviously there's quite a lot of there's a big low grade halo around some of those high grade structures. So what's happening is you get the big structure that's running through. That's where you get that very high grade, and then the gold mineralisation is dispersing throughout there. So you're getting these halos through there. The results that we've been putting out recently, we seem to have identified a number of sort of higher grade structures. And where Indomitable sits, it's on the top of that fold closure where you have the big 20 kilometre long corridor that comes up, and then it bends back on itself. So that's where Indomitable and Indomitable North sit. So structurally, it's a really exciting spot. And you've got these sort of BIF units running through there. And so you've got large structures cutting through the stratigraphy. So the stratigraphy is what's bending over, and then these structures are running through. And where the structures are cutting through the stratigraphy is where we're getting those good grades. And the biggest thing about it is when you've got this very large footprint, and it's a large oxide area. I said, I mean, the drill depth that we've drilled down to, I mean, in some areas, the oxide zone runs down to about 190 metres. So it's very, very weathered. And we consider that a signature of something that could be potentially a lot bigger at depth.
And that's what I was going to ask you. All this weathered zone, this sort of shallow, high-grade oxide mineralisation that you're finding at the moment, it's got to be coming from somewhere. Have you been thinking about maybe at depths? Because this is a big land holding. Do you think that there's potential for something quite high-grade? And, wouldn't it be good, Matt, if we could somehow get, I mean, I know technology is helping a bit at the moment, but wouldn't it be good if we could somehow get an X-ray machine and go, oh, there it is? Can't do that. We've got to keep using. I get frustrated sometimes going, surely we can send man to the moon. Can't we just find where this is? But there's got to be something there, I suspect, if you've got all this shallow, high-grade stuff.
Yeah, there is. I mean, look, there's certainly a couple of techniques, and certainly a few companies have had success with some new technologies of sort of honing in on those gold areas. But we're not having that. I guess we're finding the best thing about finding gold is a drill bit, and it's the balance between extending the very shallow high grade sort of footprint that we have at Indomitable along strike, which is really good when you start thinking, not that we're there yet, but when you start looking at sort of advancing a project into development and so forth, it's having lots of shallow high grade ounces. It's great to get a big project up and running. But we really want to sort of understand where all those fluids are coming from, because when you look at some of the large deposits, I mean, there's, within WA, these big orogenic gold systems, I mean, they can host some major deposits that can go down sort of, hundreds of kilometres, hundreds of metres. So I think we're just scratching the surface of something that could potentially be a lot bigger.
So I guess it's the blue sky, really, isn't it? Because you've also got regional prospects. Like, do you feel like you're just getting started? And I'm saying this from an investor point of view, and this is not investment advice, ladies and gentlemen. But I just want to understand from your point of view, Matt, you've been in the industry for a while. What do you think you've got your hands on here? Because we've talked about the laws, we've talked about Vanguard and Indomitable, how big this land size is. What's Alto Metals' strategy going forward? Do you see this as a standalone development? Do you see yourself bringing this into production, and what sort of time frame are we looking at? Because there's so much still to do.
I think I think there's a few questions in there.
Sorry.
Look, I really do think we're onto something. When you look at the scale of the project, and it's already produced over 1 million ounces, we've defined 600,000 ounces. This is a whole gold field, and the endowment of these gold fields is multi-million ounces. If you look at, I guess the next belt over to us is Agnew Belt. That's the endowment there is like tenfold the current endowment of sandstone, and the drilling's been a lot deeper, and so there's nothing to say why we haven't got something at depth, and it's just a case of finding it, and that's why we're taking that systematic approach and not getting distracted with. We've got a fantastic pipeline of projects, and not to be flippant, but we don't need to go and acquire any more ground because we're not even sort of fully exploring some of the ground that we have, and there's some outstanding targets. Some of our regional targets I was mentioning to you earlier. I was going through with our geos. We're looking at Hacks and Arroyo, which are two high-grade reefs, which in their day produced both about 200,000 ounces at 16 grams and 25 grams per tonne. So exceptional. We haven't gone back there as a company and really looked at that for quite some time, and they're sitting there in our pipeline. We're doing a bit of work in the background. We've got some soils that will be starting soon, but if that was in another company, that would be their lead project or projects. And so for us, it's just not wanting to get distracted. We can see, we have the focus of the Lords, Vanguard, and Indomitable. That will deliver. We're very confident of that. And so I guess, the geos the team we're building out here are really pleased as well, because they're actually getting to work on a project that sort of is consistently delivering some high grade results. So they get out there and they can sort of see and they can see how these deposits grow. So they saw how Vanguard, tripled in size, and now they're looking at Indomitable, and it's like, wow, we're sort of just almost everywhere they're going, they're finding a lot more gold, which is great to hear. And they love working on the projects. And I think sort of it's a pretty exciting time for us the next 12 months, that's for sure.
All right. So going back to the strategy going forward, I'm speaking to you in July. And by the way, if you want to see Matt in person, head up to Noosa next week, because I think you're presenting next Wednesday at the Noosa Mining Conference. So if you want to go and, I haven't asked him the right questions, go and see him up at the Noosa Mining Conference, and you'll be presenting up there. But tell us, I'm talking to you now in July, what's the strategy for the rest of the year? Just continuing to drill, focusing just on Indomitable? What are you going to be doing, Matt? Where's the value add?
It's look, it is. We're keeping the rig at the moment. The plan is to keep the rig at Indomitable for as long as possible, which is a hard call as well, because there's a lot of unfinished business at Lord Nelson. We want to go and test the depth extensions of that Lord's granodiorite. We also want to get back to Vanguard and test the strike extensions at Vanguard. There was some fantastic high grade there within that 150,000 ounces of resource. There was a pit there that was 47,000 ounces at 3.8 grams, so very high grade. And that was very shallow. It was only down to about sort of 60, 70 meters.
Oh, wow.
And that's, again, open. It's on that, northwest trend within the corridor. So that's something that we're really keen to get back and test. But in some ways, I keep saying to the team, is how do we justify taking the rig off Indomitable at the moment? Because we're, aggressively growing that resource there. We're aiming to get a resource update out on Indomitable for the last quarter of this year. And I don't think there's any justification for taking it off Indomitable, because we're still growing it. So for us, the focus is sort of, primarily on Indomitable, and then sort of working through some of those regional aspects in the background as well. What
about getting another rig or two?
We could get another rig or two. It's very expensive.
That's true. But when you've got so many targets, I guess slow and steady wins the race. I get that. But at the same time, you don't want to bring it off Indomitable, but there's so much still to be done at Vanguard.
Yeah, look, there is, and I think that's some of the things we've been talking about getting, mobilising additional rigs. We've got the team here that could support that. It's really sort of just on timing.
Okay. Now, I noted that Westgold are on your register. Now, you probably don't want to talk about it too much, but that to me says it's an interesting project because they don't want to get themselves involved with something that they don't think has legs to grow. Is that do they get involved very much, or are they just quietly sitting on the register?
Look, we've had the odd chat with the guys at Westcott. They love what they're seeing. They love what we're doing. Obviously, we're sort of out there growing a really exciting advanced exploration project. And I think that's it. They're certainly, very passive. We're kicking really good goals, and they're blocking what they're seeing us do.
What would you say to our audience right now because I know that you've, as I said before, you've been systematically working through this. And I don't want to finish this off yet, but I just wanted to ask you, do you think the game change is going to be when you find where the source of all this shallow high-grade oxide ore is? Is that what's going to make Matt Bowles go, hey, Kerry, I need to come back on very quickly. We've just found something amazing.
Who knows what that game changer is going to be? I think some of these results we put out yesterday, 12 months ago, would have set the market alight themselves. So I think if we keep doing what we're doing, and I, obviously I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in the project, and same as the guys here, but we think that there's multiple opportunities to have a major discovery. And it's just about, you look at all these discoveries that have been made, and they're not overnight successes. They've been worked on. There's been a lot of targeting that's been there, whether it's sort of, just from a number of companies that have worked that ground up before one company goes in and does it, or whether they've just worked on those aspects and sort of, then that's that one hole that changes everything. But I think for us, the approach is we're hedging our bets, and the way that you hedge your bets is through just doing systematic exploration. And we've got a really good team here. We've got it supported by some very, very well-known geologists that have been involved in a number of major discoveries themselves. So we have quite a few sort of technical sessions where people come in and sort of provide their views on what we should be doing. And that's also a validation to the team here on sort of that we're knowing that we're on the right track. And it's great that so many people want to be involved in this as well.
Are the labs catching up, Matt?
We're keeping them honest at the moment. We're riding them pretty hard. They're doing a lot better. I think they've changed their business model as well. And look, it was a crazy time. It still is a crazy time, but I think people have just realised that they can't overstretch. And the arrangement we've got with the lab, because we had the one rig there, we were able to commit delivering a certain amount of samples every month. So that enabled them to commit to feeding through their pipeline a lot easier. So it worked a lot ways rather than sort of just, dropping, 40,000 samples on someone.
Yeah, all of a sudden. Well, there's plenty of work to come. Matt, I want to talk to you again in a few months' time, but for now we're running out of time. So everyone knows this is like how I like to finish off my chats. And you're probably going to say to me you got more, but I only need 3 reasons for our community out there to be sitting up and taking notice of what you're doing right now. What do you think those are?
It's a hard one. I do have a lot more. I think the 3, look, as I said, we've got 900 square kilometres of ground. It's really the first time that Alto's had it in one consolidated position. And we're going through and systematically exploring an entire gold field. I think that's the thing that people need to understand. It's not just a single little project. It's like an entire gold field. And we're kicking a lot of goals there, which is great. Secondly, Indomitable. You will see Indomitable continuing to grow. Hopefully we can replicate the same speed that we have grown with at Vanguard and the Lord. So we almost double the resource, global resource, and triple the resource scale at Vanguard. So when you look at the results that are coming through from Indomitable, there's some fantastic high grade there. So there's no reason why that can't continue to grow.
Before you get on to number 3, you said fantastic high grade, and we never actually told our audience that. What's Indomitable, some of the high grades that are coming through from Indomitable before we get on to point 3? So
have a look at yesterday's announcement. So there was a new zone 500 metres north of the known deposit. The 2 headline numbers there was 13 metres at 4.6 and 15 metres at 4.2 from 24 metres and 30 metres. So very shallow.
Very shallow, high grade.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's what you want.
I just wanted to bring that up to our audience. Point number 3, Matt.
Look, and the third one is we haven't really talked about it. It's the depth potential. I mean, gold comes from below, and we really haven't found the source of these deposits. And so for us, that's where we can see that real sort of game changer will be. The depth potentially is phenomenal. As I said before, these orogenic gold systems can get a lot deeper, and we're still only just scratching the surface. So it's all about the systematic approach that we're taking at the moment will help that targeting for drilling those deeper holes, which will we'll find that source, and that's where you get those primary sort of zones carries very high grade.
So it's clearly something that's there because you're finding gold all the time. Find that source for us, Matt, pretty quickly. No, I'm just kidding. Matt, it's been great to chat to you today. Again, as I said before, if you want to see Matt in person, make sure you head up to the Noosa Mining Conference on next week. Up there at Noosa, Matt will be presenting on Wednesday at 1:15, and he'll have a booth there so you can go and have a chat to him. Matt, great to see you. Thanks for joining me on Small Caps today.
Great. Thanks, chatting, Kerry, and look forward to seeing you next week.